right, this is ASC's Chewy. She's one of our American Sentinels. She was sired by Vlad, and her mother is ASC's Lady Smith. So it's out of ASC's Vlad and Lady Smith. Sit. She knows a little bit, but she is not finished in her training by any means. But it's time for me to have another demo dog. You know, our last demo dog has passed away. And now that I'm a retired teacher, I have more time. We're going to be doing some more obedience training. Down. Sit. Down. And you can see she's not finished in her training at all. She just has a few basics, but we're going to improve this. And in improving it, we're going to use a couple of methods of training, which are classical conditioning and operant conditioning. Now, I wanted to do a little demo here before I start so you can see this dog is not finished. And over the next few weeks, we're going to post progressive updates in her training to see her progress and how it goes. But before we demo the training and what all is going to take place, I want to describe to you, our viewers, what classical conditioning is and what operant conditioning is. Now, classical conditioning was developed by a scientist or behavioral scientist named Ivan Pavlov. You may have heard of the ringing bell, the presence of the food, and the dog salivating. That's what he's famous for. He's a behavioral psychologist or a behavioral trainer, basically, that studied psychology and how behavior modification works and associations work. And classical conditioning is also called associative learning, because what you do in classical conditioning is you build an association with some sort of marker. In his experiment, it was a bell with an anticipated or soon followed natural stimulus. The natural stimulus is called an unconditioned stimulus because it does not require any conditioning for the dog to respond to it. And then, of course, you have the unconditioned response, which is salivating. So you present the unconditioned stimulus, the food, which is a natural stimulus, and you get a natural unconditioned response of salivating. But he wanted to see what happens when you precede that presentation of food with a marker, a bell. And so he would ding a bell and then present the food. And he did this with enough times that the dog became conditioned to that bell to begin to expect food. So the dog associated the bell with the presentation of food. And so that's why classical conditioning is also called associative learning. And this has a lot to do with obedience training, because whenever we give a command, the dog is going to develop an expectation of a behavior of some sort. And so the command is always going to basically be classical conditioning or associative learning. But in order to increase or decrease the behavior, we're not going to use classical conditioning. We're going to then switch. So classical is for building the association. But another training method called operant conditioning, which was B.F. Skinner, is going to be used to increase or decrease desired and undesired behaviors. Now, in operant conditioning, you always have basically 4 quadrants, and it's a 2x2 if you were to draw it on a square. On one side, you have reinforcement and punishment. Reinforcement always increases a desired behavior, or always increases a behavior. And so hopefully you're only reinforcing desired behaviors, because you don't want to increase undesired behaviors. All right, so reinforcement increases a behavior expression, or the frequency of a behavior's expression, and punishment decreases the expression of a behavior. Now, the other side of the quadrants, or the table, is positive and negative. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking positive means good and negative means bad, and that's not the case. What this means is like mathematics. Positive means you're going to add something, and negative means you're going to take something away or remove something. So a positive reinforcement means I'm going to give the dog some sort of reward in exchange for desired behavior in order to increase the expression of that behavior. A negative reinforcer would be I'm going to remove something that the dog doesn't like in order to reward the desired behavior. Okay? So let's say, for example, I want the dog to come to me and I have leash tension on that line. That's a negative to the dog. Well, when the dog complies, I might remove that tension on that line in order to reinforce that behavior of coming to me or being compliant. So that's positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. Now, punishment. Positive punishment means giving the dog something that it does not want in exchange for an undesired behavior. So let's say, for example, the dog was not coming to me and I give a leash correction. That would be applying pressure, something that the dog does not like, especially if you have a prong or a choker or a narrow collar that puts more pressure on the throat. That's going to be a positive punishment in exchange for an undesired behavior, which would be pulling. And then you also have a negative punishment, which is going to be removing something that the dog wants in exchange for undesired behavior. One of the most common negative punishments I use is denial of a reward. So let's say I have a dog in a sit stay from a distance, and I walk up to present it a reward, and the dog starts to get up. Well, I take that reward away. So I just removed something that dog wanted because it got up. And the dogs will quickly learn to put their butt back down when that happens. All right, so enough talk on the stimulus, and let's get to work.